Deveyon started his career at Calumet College, making school history as the first to make double All-American honors. He finished out his college career at Madonna University, becoming national champion in the 200-meter dash. In August, Blacknell ran at the U.S Championships. He is ranked in the world top 250 list for the 100-meter dash and top 500 for the 200-meter dash. Thank you, Deveyon, for joining me today. And just to get right into it, how old were you when you started running, and what made you stick with the sport?
Okay, so I'm a late bloomer, so I'm kind of old now. But I started track in 2019, my senior year of high school. I had started track, never ran before. I did cross country before for basketball, but I feel like track and cross country are like two different things, you know. But yeah, I started track my senior year, and I was I was okay at it. You know, I was running some pretty okay times, you know, to start out. So I had ended up getting a full ride to a small college in Indiana. So I kind of saw some potential there. So that's kind of what it made me start stick with it.
All right. So, did you end up deciding to go to that school, or it kind of took you in a different direction?
Yeah. So I had ended up going to that school. So the I'm from a small town called East Chicago. So kind of everybody knows everybody. My high school track coach, his brother was like the coach of that school that offered me the full ride. So I had ended up going to that school, and the coach at the college was he's a really good coach. Like, you know, he was a one-on-one coach. You know, you ever been to like a small school, like a school where
Yeah.
like, you know, teachers are like more, you know, involved with you. That's kind of how he was with me. He kind of like started me from not knowing nothing about track to getting me to like PR every track race.
What was the track culture like at your school? Do you feel like, I guess from what you said a little bit, do you feel like it helped you advance, or is there anything that you wish you had in your program?
So uh my first 2 years of college, I went to a small college called Calumet College, St. Joseph in Indiana. And like I told you, me and my coach, we was really close. So, you know, we was having one-on-one meetings. We was watching film. You know, we didn't have a lot of facilities, we didn't have an indoor track. We was running on the treadmill, you know, for indoor season. Like, we was grinding. Like, we was getting it done though. So I feel like that culture there was more like gritty, you know, more grassroots, more, you know, like we got to get out the mud type of vibe. And you know, it really pushed me because that's kind of how I was raised. So, you know, it was nothing foreign to me. You know, I was used to always having to put in a little bit more work. Um, I would say like I enjoyed that experience, and once I transferred to the other school, Madonna, I would say that was more of a it was a more competitive. It was more of a team. It was a lot of great athletes there. You know, it was a lot of people pushing each other every day at practice. So that was more of like a synergy. You know, everybody fed off of everybody.
Right. That's great. What made you transfer schools? Was it sports related at all, or other circumstances?
That's a good question because like my college career was like so all over the place. So um when I was at Calumet College, I had a really great year. Um, I had became a two-time All-American. You know, I was the first person to ever become an All-American at that school. So I was pretty good. I was ranked like fifth in the country in a division. um, my coach, he was about to accept a position somewhere else, and I didn't want to go to that school. So he was like, "Look, you had a really great year. You can really go Division 1." Because I think I ran like 10-3 low when I was young. So I was really marketable at that time. I entered the transfer portal, and you know, schools like Baylor was hitting me up. Schools like Eastern Michigan, schools like University of Florida, you know, they hit me up. Purdue University, there was another big school that hit me up. But Madonna also hit me up, and they also just won a national championship. So, you know, I'm thinking like all these other schools, I'm probably gonna have to come out of pocket some type of money and everything. I was considering things like that, and I'm a real spiritual person. So I was asking God, like, what should I do? I'm 19. I don't know how to make a decision. Ask God, and I feel like He helped me make the decision to go to Madonna. So yeah,
That's great. It's definitely, there's a lot to think about when it comes to school, so it makes
real.
sense. How do you feel like your faith has kind of helped you through your journey overall?
My faith has like put me through a roller coaster, in this sport. And I'm very grounded. I'm very grounded in my faith. I would say, like, it's allowed me to look at the sport from a different perspective. Because when I'm winning, things are great. When I'm losing, things are tough. So it's like having that same faith that things are going to work out even when it's not looking bright. Because this past indoor season wasn't my best. It's probably the worst I've ran in my career. So I had to stay strong, keep a smile, and keep on working every day. And I'm more so focused on outdoor this year now. Even though it's probably indoors is over for me now, but I'm working on small details, technique, things I missed last year. So um, my faith is really what keeps me going every day. It's like my north star.
That's amazing. That's definitely important, especially for the sports world, because it's not a linear path. In 2023, you were named national champion for the 200-meter dash. But you shared on Instagram that you almost quit track right before the meet. So, if you're
Yeah.
willing to share, what brought you to that place and how were you able to overcome?
So yeah, that year I was focusing on winning that 60-meter dash, and yeah, fast forward to nationals that year. I had made it for the 60. I made it for the 200 indoors, and I had a girlfriend at this time too. So this girl gave me a lot of stress. I'm not gonna lie, gave me a lot of stress. I don't recommend you know doing sports and having a girlfriend or boyfriend. It's too stressful. But yeah, so the night before prelims, me and her got into this big fight. It was yeah, it was just a big fight, and it was over something stupid. And the next day I was going into the race, and I tripped out of the blocks out of the 60-meter final. I mean, prelims, and I was so hurt because like I was focusing all year, I was training so hard all year and everything. So I walked back to camp. I had to talk with God. I'm just like, God, like, like I've trained so hard for this moment, and I felt like I choked. And I just heard a voice say, you still got one more race. You still got the 200. So I don't think I even really warmed up for real. I just kind of just did two strides. I didn't do a block start. I just raced the 200 prelims, and I was ranked like second going into finals. And my teammate, he was also ranked like third. So going into that final, I just really didn't have any expectations. I told myself, I worked hard this year, so I'm gonna leave with something. I'm winning this race. Like I'm finna win. I don't care. I'm finna win. So ran the 200, and I won, and I couldn't believe it because I was in tears. 24 hours before that race, ready to give up, because something didn't go my way, and I just kind of seen a different perspective. I trusted God, and the work that I put in, and it worked out for me. So yeah.
What has been the biggest adjustment for you transitioning from collegiate track to the professional circuit?
Accountability. I would say, like, accountability is probably the biggest thing because you're coming from a collegiate system where it's like you really don't have to do nothing, just show up. You know, Everything is laid out for you. Your university usually does all the logistics, all the planning out, and everything like that. And you just it's like just walking into work kind of thing. I would say now that I'm pro, I had to do a lot of growing up, a lot of maturing, a lot of really holding myself accountable on waking up on time, making sure I'm putting in maximum effort, and then going beyond that. I feel like last year I did a really great job of that. and I PR'd, every event I ran. So like I'll say the hard part, now that you're pro is doing it every year. As your body changes, as your body getting a little older, you can't really do the same things you was doing at 21, or at 19 or 18. A lot of the times, sometimes you go, you're not going to be there with your training partners every day. I'm blessed to have some really fast training partners. Um, but a lot of the times, you have to show up yourself. You have to want to do this because like if you're not signed in this sport, you're not getting paid, and that's the biggest thing because you're sacrificing a lot. You're an adult now. It's not like in college where you're getting a degree and you're doing track. Once you go pro, it's like you're just running track, and if you're not getting paid, it's like what's the incentive? You know?
I saw you are doing some like ambassador work for Magna Electrolytes.
Yeah.
How difficult or easy has it been for you to get NIL deals and like other things throughout your career?
My friend, my frat brother, my friend, he's an NIL like ambassador agent. Um, he's shown me some ways to get some deals out there, and but actually how I got that brand deal, my agent he talked to a couple organizations and they was able to like connect with me, but it's kind of difficult because you need a certain level of you know of I'm not gonna say fame, but like a status, for a lot of brands to work with you. And track is one of those sports where you just have to be fast at that time. Organizations don't want to hear about, yeah, I'm going to be good in 2 years. No, they want to see if you're good now. No, they want to see if you have 1 million followers now. And it's stuff like that. And so, I mean, for me though, I'm doing pretty well. My TikToks have been getting some really really good views. So I mean, it's been great. Drink Magna, they're really nice. I just got a new shipment today. But yeah, I would say like until you get that Nike or Adidas sponsorships, it's really a hustle.
Going with that, in the generation of social media, do you feel
Mhm.
like it's been instrumental to your growth as an athlete or a hindrance? Because I know there's good and bad things about social media.
Yeah.
But is it challenging to see like other athletes and kind of comparing, or do you feel like it's been more helpful than anything?
I'll say a little bit of both. It's like a double-edged sword. I'll say it's great, to connect with people, that's across the country doing the same thing you're doing. It's probably great to like, you know, connect with these people. I think the other day I was talking to Grant Holloway. He was supporting, some of my TikTok videos. He was, encouraging me, a little bit. And, without social media, I probably would never be able to talk to him unless we're at a meet or something like that. And I would say, like how you said, it can hurt you by comparing yourself, wanting to be somewhere, but at the same time, they're somewhere completely different in their life than you are. So I feel like you just have to humble yourself sometimes. You have to remember, everything's a process, trial and error. I feel like that's where faith comes in, discipline and everything. And I'm glad, I'm very grounded in my faith, to really understand that, everything has its time and place.
Do you feel like throughout your journey that there was anything that you believed would come easier for you but has taken more time to develop?
I would say like using my speed and technique. I would say I thought that would probably be a little bit more easier for me. But like I said, I'm kind of learning on the fly. I've been running since 2019, but I've every year I've had to really learn on the spot, and I'm kind of noticing that the best practice you can get is at a race, or the best practice you can get is when you take a loss. Last year when I went to USA Nationals, and I got to race against, Trayvon Bromell. I got to race against, Javante Harding. These fast athletes. I got to see, up close what I'm doing wrong and everything like that, and what I can work on, what I can fix. So I'll say like the hardest thing is just really the time, because that race was like 8 months ago, and I have to wait, another 6 months before I get that chance again. So it's just the time factor in track is just really tough.
Like there, you'd wish there's more opportunities on the big stage to practice.
Yeah, for sure. Because track is really not marketed like that in America, so it's like really hard to find a really good meet, a really competitive meet where people are going to pull up, come show their talents and everything, give a show. And like it's hard. You have nationals every year. Okay, that's one race, and then you have New Balance, but only athletes that are signed, athletes that have done things in the past are getting into those races. I have a really good agent. Me and him was talking, and he was saying I could have got to some of these races this indoor season if my times was there, because he knows like the meet directors and everything. It's just I was very unfortunate to have a road season. My goodness. But yeah.
For your second season, I think you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that you ran at the USA Championships. Tell me about your experience. What was it like to be at one of the biggest meets for track?
It felt really like it felt great to be there. I think like the year before I was at home watching Sprint. Have you seen Sprint on Netflix?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm sitting there watching that, and last year when I was there, I'm looking like, man, this really feels like Sprint like right now. It feels like like I'm finna be on a Netflix like show or something. But it felt really great. I was there with Nigel. Nigel is a character. That guy is a character, and he made it real fun. I'll tell you that. Um, but it felt really great because, like, man, it felt like all the hard work that I've been putting in for like these past couple of years. Being around these top tier athletes, made me felt like I belong, and that was probably the biggest stage that I've probably been on so far. I've been at Milrose games, I've been at Penn relays, but having myself at a national championships at the professional level, and that was really big for me.
I'm glad you had a great experience. Speaking of Nigel, we spoke about the Olympics and track culture. How do you
Mhm.
feel about the whole thing with track kind of being put to the side, like outside of the Olympics every 4 years?
I feel like it's another double-edged sword because it builds that hype. It builds that that attention to the sport. Like when people think of the Olympics, they think this is like the top of the top. This is the best of the best. This is the NBA finals of track. So I think, that attention alone is great. But in the meantime, I do believe we should have, the same type of attention towards, like world championships and stuff like that. Because that'll keep people engaged. That'll keep people near the sport. And I don't know. It's like the Olympics is such a great, moment to have, but every 4 years is a long time. It's hard to keep people, engaged for a 45-minute, basketball game or something like that. So, I mean, I'm not really too sure what we can do, but I know Grand Slam track, that was a really good idea, but, the whole investors, backing out and everything just made it really kind of look bad.
I wish it worked out too. I was happy to see though they brought out Athlos and everything for the second time.
Yeah.
Um, I mean that's not really too helpful for you because you're not a female athlete.
Nigel
um,
still went. I should have went with him. He still
mhm.
went to have fun.
It looked really fun. My brother went too, and I was like, dang, I gotta go next year. What do you feel is the best way to support track and field athletes right now? Just like on a community level.
I will say track is probably the hardest or most mentally challenging like sport I ever did. Um, so I would say like, something around, you know, keeping like supporting the track athletes, because we're the ones who's grinding every day. We're the ones who stay in discipline for 4 years, just to get very minimum compensation, and that's very frustrating because you're dedicating your life, you're dedicating time away from your kids, like time away from work, time away from like your family. Like for myself, I would say I moved 4 hours away, to train every day, for a sport that doesn't even pay me. It's more so I'm doing it for a different reason than money. But it's nice to get paid for my hard work. But compensation for sure will be like a it will support the athletes a little better, the community, and just having like I'll say like therapists for mental health. Because this is a very tough journey.
Right now, how do you keep yourself mentally prepared and just for meets, but also like you're saying, the long road of pursuing your goals?
I got to go back to faith. Right now, participating in Lent. Have you ever heard about Lent? So participating in that, fasting and praying and staying caught up in my word, um, and also setting different goals for myself. Setting like different things, challenging myself every day. It's like someone told me the other day, like you got to keep a goal in front of yourself. It's like to keep yourself sane. You got to have something that you're reaching towards, because like the days you don't wake up, it's gonna be hard. If you don't have anything to get you out of bed. So for sure, just having that goal, being grounded in my religion.
Are you doing this for yourself, your family, something or someone else?
Yeah. This past Christmas, I had went. 'Cause I'm originally from Gary, Indiana, Northwest Indiana, Chicago, that whole region. Um, my family's there, and I really don't get to see them like that. After college, I kind of stayed in Michigan to train. They're about 4 hours away from Detroit, so it's like a 4 hour difference. But yeah, this past Christmas, I went to go visit them, and we went to church. And quick little story. So when I was younger, this guy named Glenn Robinson, he came to our church, and the pastor acknowledged him, told him to stand up and everything. And he was an NBA player, and he was like making millions of dollars. He pulled up to the church in like a Rolls Royce, and I'm like, man, like this guy's a hero. Like that's kind of like really how I looked at him. So yeah, this past Christmas I went home and we went to church, and my pastor, he acknowledged me and he asked me to stand up in front of everybody. And the way the kids was looking at me, and the way the congregation and the church members, applauded, and it just felt like I'm doing this for my community. I'm doing this for the people that love me, people that supported me. It's that kind of keeps me going. The people who's looking back at me at home, watching me on TV. Those are the people that I'm doing it for. So it's easier for me to get out of bed, when it's not personal. It's for them. And my grandma, I love my grandma. She's the sweetest lady on the earth. She she would go outside and tell everybody I'm the fastest man in the world. Like grandma, I just lost. You can't say that.
There's really nothing like family and especially the love of your grandparents. So that's that's awesome. So what do you feel like has been your biggest accomplishment to date?
I don't know. I'm a really humble person. Like if you was to ask somebody else, that question about me, they'll tell you, some different things. But I don't know. I feel like every season that I go through, that's in life and off the track. I feel like I do something that's like, very warming to my heart. And I feel like the other day when I was at work, there was a scripture that like really stood out to me. It got me through a lot of hard times and everything like that. And I seen a kid at my job reading the Bible, and I told him about the scripture, and he read it, and he like got some joy like out of it, and I felt like really happy that I was able to like pass on some type of spiritual knowledge, somebody, because I feel like that's what really matters at the end of the day. Um, you know, growing as an individual. But yeah, for track though, I don't know. Like, I feel like every year I kind of surprise myself. Um, Last year when I PR'd in 100, I had it was a track meet in London, Ontario, Canada, and in the prelims, I injured my back and I couldn't even walk. Like it was bad. It was it was bad. It was bad. I had to take like 6 ibuprofens. I had to get a massage, and the lady had to tape up my back for me to even walk. And I just mentally told myself like, no, you came this far. You just PR'd. I ran I think 10:14 in 100. With no wind, and that was like one of the fastest times in the world. And then I went and ran 10:10 in the final. So for me to mentally get injured and pull it together within an hour before my race and PR again, that's pretty mind blowing to me.
Was it just like a superficial injury, or was it something that you had to take a long time to recover from?
It was a strain in my back, my lower back, and after that race, we drove back. It was like a 4 hour drive from Detroit. Um, that next morning, I couldn't walk. Like I literally had to roll out of bed. I had to like crawl to my car. I ended up getting into my car and I like drove 4 hours to Chicago and went to the hospital. That's when they told me I had a strain in my back. And, you know, they was like, I can recover. It just would take a lot of work. So I did the rehab. I did the physical therapy. I, rested and everything. And you know what's so crazy? I ended up PRing in my next race. So it was like, I went from I couldn't even walk to PRing again, and God was really blessing me around that time.
For sure.